Just to kind of start us off with like just a quick lighthearted question, just see how has everything been so far, your first couple weeks as acting president, and maybe some of the challenges that you've faced or some of the great things that you've seen and experienced so far.
Yeah. Well, I am in my middle of my third week, I guess, somewhere in between third and fourth week. I feel like I've been here for about 3 months because there's so much that's happened, met so many people. So that's the great thing, but also part of the challenge. I think I was doing something like between 500 and 1,000 new faces a day for a while, and really trying to get to a lot of different constituencies. As you've seen, I've been out and about on campus. Obviously, I wanted to have a chance with the lantern, so you're right there at the front of the line, which is great. A lot of competition right now for my time, and I'm letting the staff kind of help navigate that because this is a large, complex campus, and sometimes I want to make sure that I'm putting myself in the right place first. The best part of my first few weeks is how welcoming everybody's been. As you all know, my wife Lynn and I have been all over the world. This is I think our 24th move. I've had a lot of, high visibility campus leadership jobs. Annapolis, Newport, Rhode Island, the middle of Nebraska, and now here. And the community's been unbelievably welcoming. So that's been great. The challenge is just trying to make sure that I get in front and have a chance to engage with as many people as I can. And the clock is kind of ticking. I mean, we've got, Senate coming up tomorrow, and State of the University address is coming up in a few weeks. And these are big events, our first Board of Trustees meeting. And, the drumbeat of meetings and things that the president must engage in, those are not changeable. And make sure that you're prepared for those. And everything for me is the first of. So, my first chance to talk to all of you. I've been in front of a lot of TV cameras, been with a microphone in my hand for a number of different groups. And I've enjoyed meeting everybody. I'm now recognizable. I can't go out to eat anymore. I can't go to the airport anymore. And I realize that once again, in my new life, I am Mickey Mouse in Disneyland. So, you get used to that and just accept it. I don't turn away selfies with people, and if people want to come up and say hello, I always engage. So that's just, part of what comes with the job.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I guess I can kind of start us off. Speaking of challenges, I know you said just personal challenges that you faced with your first few weeks here in office, but what would you say are the biggest challenges facing the university as of today? Yeah.
Well, obviously, how we are feeling, the sense on campus with some of the global events that are happening that are really tough, tough conversations. Obviously, somebody that's been around the world a number of times, been involved in, these types of friction points around the world, it's always tough, especially when you have a personal connection, whether it be a family member, somebody for events that are going on in Israel with Hamas, or even in the Ukraine. And there are other events happening around the world, and I know that our faculty and our students, they feel that, and they want to be able to have an open conversation about that. So I have already spent some time and got in front of some of those students, Hillel, Abad, and SJP. So I wanted to go in there and hear their concerns and be empathetic, and also make sure they know that they do have a voice and that their voice can be heard. But we also have to understand that keeping the temperature down so it doesn't look like one group is pitting itself against another is not helpful on this campus, because my goal is to keep our campus safe and secure. That's one of my top priorities.
I do have a follow-up going along with safety and security and all of that. What are kind of your priorities with addressing crime on campus? Mm-hmm. And do you plan to kind of keep some of the things that Moeller implemented with the increased cop presence and such?
Right. So I've gotten to look into that a little bit more. So I've been over to Blankenship Hall and met with some of our security folks over there. I've seen the very intricate, integrated camera system that we have here on campus. Over 5,000 cameras that overlook the entire campus live, which is very impressive. Is that enough? I'm learning a little bit more about some of the things that we're doing. We're still hiring some of our police force, so I think we're still looking for 7 more hires within there to meet what we said we would get to, and then we'll take another look. But whatever we're doing, we're going to continue to look to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep our campus safe and secure, because for our students, it's not what has happened in the past. It's not what is the event. A lot of these things have happened off campus, not even on campus. It's how they feel. You can't tell somebody how to feel, and if they feel either insecure or what else can I do to feel best protected, we got to be able to have that conversation. We got to be able to listen. I personally believe that we do have a responsibility within, even outside our own perimeter. That's where more than 50% of our students live. So, we are engaging that. We are engaging with the various security forces, whether it be the Columbus City Police, our own police force, State Highway Patrol, how they collect and share intelligence information. Are there any gaps there? What else can we do? We obviously have some our own patrols that are unarmed that are there to diffuse situations. So there's a lot that has been going on. I think the reporting folks like yourselves have done a good job telling that story, what is actually happening, because sometimes people may not feel secure, but they don't know all the other things that are actually currently happening or how much we're going to continue to do to make sure our campus is secure.
And with that feeling of security, I know that a lot of students felt like there was an increase in some anti-Semitic attacks on campus last semester, and a lot of people felt like university may have not addressed it properly, which has led to the Department of Education investigating the university. So how are you guys going to be kind of going forward with that looming over, and with the conflict still going on, and with students still calling for more safety measures and also divestment from those areas as well?
So again, First Amendment rights, students' voices, we listen, we're hearing them. That's one of the reasons I met with those groups. I learned about the Department of Education claim against the university just yesterday. I know you reported on that. Obviously, we'll engage in that. And again, it's investigation first. But what I will say is, whatever the response was from Acting President Moeller, I've been very clear on my statements here, coming here from day one. We're not going to tolerate harassment. We're not going to tolerate any bigotry of any kind, whether it be anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, any type of bigotry. Now, I understand there is some speech that is protected, and we got to understand that. But when anything leads to incitement of violence, then we're going to have to hold people accountable, and that's how we're going to be. And I've been about as clear as I can be on that.
Yeah, so I know we talked about some topics such as crime and free speech. And so I kind of wanted to ask if you have a plan of certain policies that you hope to implement during your first few months in the office, and or if you even plan to carry out some of the same initiatives that KMJ started. Or like I know we mentioned previous Acting President Peter Mueller with his increase in police presence on campus. So are these things that you hope to continue? And then if not, what policies do you hope to implement?
Right. So there's been a void of a firm presidential leadership here for a while. You all know that. So as I am now in my 24th day in the job, my first job is to make sure I do no harm, to keep, if this is a very large ship for a second, we can use that nautical reference, to keep the ship sailing clean and straight, and then learn how to operate. And so I'm really getting my arms wrapped around that. So to answer your question directly, yes, I'm inheriting the same things that were enacted by Acting President Mueller. A lot of the things that President Johnson had in place, I haven't removed or changed any of those policies, other than the ones that have already been stated before I got here. So there's been some changes on hiring practices, some of those things that you've already written about. And before I make any other changes beyond either increasing resources for more security or any other policy change, I need to make sure I understand exactly how the organization is today. And that's what's happening right now. That's going to take me a few months. And in the meanwhile, I'm trying to take this vision of where I think this university is going to go over the next 3 to 5 to 10 years, turn that into a written strategy, something I plan to produce somewhere around the 100-day mark, And then we'll start to move that, measure ourselves against the things we say that are important, and then we'll start to think about making changes as necessary.
Yes, gotcha.
Yeah.
And speaking of just a lot of change that's occurring, I know that with the SCOTUS decision back in the early days of the summer,
Right.
that has caused a big shift in admissions process. And I kind of wanted to see if you knew or had any comments on, how the university is looking to revamp their admissions process in light of that recent decision, and kind of just to get your definition of merit and what that means for, incoming students or prospective students here at Ohio
Sure.
State.
So it's interesting, when I was the superintendent of the Naval Academy, which is the same job as being the president of the university, just a slightly smaller campus, I was deeply involved in the admissions process. And of course, it's more complicated because you have to have a nomination from a member of Congress or the president or the vice president. And there's a lot of academic, physical leadership standards by which you have to get in. If you reference the SCOTUS decision, they exempted the service academies from that, saying that you could apply affirmative action. I never did. For 5 years that I ran the Naval Academy, we never had a quota system. We never used any affirmative action profiling of any kind to get the most diverse student body that we'd had in Naval Academy's 170 plus year history. And yet we were increasing the percentage of women that were coming to a campus, the underrepresented minorities, every single year, because we just wanted to attract the best students. And a lot of times, what will really make the difference is when students come to a campus and they see what the campus looks like. That will be the best advertising that you're ever going to have. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that I lived through this with my daughter, a little bit older than all of you. She wanted to go to a very diverse campus. We traveled to campuses all up and down the eastern seaboard. But when we went to George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia, we both noted, this campus doesn't look like some of the others. And as we did a little deeper dive, we're like, this is a campus that embraces diversity, but not just from ethnic backgrounds, just not from socioeconomic backgrounds, not just by geography or the military. It was all walks of life. So what I would tell you is when we're looking at when rules and regulations are put down to us, we're going to first of all follow the rules. But second of all, when we're looking for what types of students we want to have here, and of course we are somewhat of a selective campus, you know the numbers. Very hard to come here from out of state, with only 30% of our student body being from out of state. I think there's 10 qualified students that want to come here for every one that gets here. And then when you look at who's coming here from the state of Ohio, it's still competitive to get in. But my view is, and again, I haven't sat down with all the admissions team yet, we're looking for not only the most talented students, we're looking for the best rounded students. So sometimes that shows up in merit and academic performance. Sometimes it's going to show up in the ability to be a natural leader. Sometimes it's going to show up in other skill sets that somebody might have. And the application process, I am hopeful, as I will learn more about it, will allow those elements of the whole person to shine through so that we can welcome a very diverse campus.
Okay.
Kind of pivoting off of that, we know that we're currently in the process of trying to fill the vice president role. We just wanted to see what qualities you're looking for in a vice president, and if you have any notes on significant progress within that search.
So it is underway. The committee's been formed. They're going through these various listening sessions, and then there'll be a call out for resumes and people will begin to be able to apply. Some of the basic things that we're looking for is two simple requirements. One is we need a provost and a senior vice president who is a leader, because that person's going to lead the academic mission principally of this great university, but also lead 15 university deans. That in alone is a leadership challenge. And you think about all the different academic disciplines that those 15 colleges represent. But we also have to have somebody that can be a little bit of a follower, because that person's still going to work for the president, and those two people have to be aligned, and that's really important. So that, and then finally, I would just say that we're looking for somebody that is a little bit different from me. Obviously, I do not have the classic academic training that a lot of lifelong academicians have. I have different qualities I bring to the job, but I definitely want somebody that's been more classically trained, been involved in research, has been at multiple levels of academia that is now ready for that position.
And kind of going along with that, you do have a very different background from typical university presidents. But so how do you view your military service and your past leadership roles as helping you in this role?
Yeah. A lot of people will look at my background and think it was my time wearing the uniform of the nation that got me here. That's just the job that I had. If you take away the military part of it, what I did get to do in uniform was, first of all, lead 2 world-class academic institutions, but more importantly than that was to lead very large, complex organizations. Some of them, the most complex things that we do in the military, like taking an aircraft carrier apart, completely apart, putting it back together to include starting up, nuclear reactors, replacing all the engineering. It was an unbelievable project that we actually delivered on budget in time. So when you do all that, it comes down to being able to manage complex tasks and people. And then as I transitioned out of uniform, I was very fortunate to transition out of leading an institution, which is a leadership institution at the U.S. Naval Academy, then to go to Nebraska and lead, again, a very large, complex, the only public university system in the entire state with 50,000 students and 16,000 faculty and staff on 4 very dispersed geographic campuses. And at the time, that was a job that I never knew that my whole life I was training for. And as I got into that job and lived through COVID like everybody else, we prospered during the most difficult times of that global pandemic and came out of it strong enough to do well in a state that's not very populated. And they're still on a course to do well as a public university, land grant, R1 research university at the flagship in Lincoln. And as I've shared with a lot of people, I wasn't looking for becoming the 17th president of the Ohio State University. I actually was very happy with what I was doing in Nebraska. Ohio State kind of found me, and they convinced me that I was what they were looking for. I questioned that, to be quite honest, at the beginning, knowing the great history of this university, and as I got more involved, spoke to everybody from student leadership to faculty to the board of trustees, that's when I realized maybe this is the right time and the right place to come here. Maybe I would be the right fit here. And this would be my last point. I've done transitions where the leadership of some of these institutions should have had a PhD, should have gone through multiple phases of their academic progressions, and I showed up without those classic pieces of paper. That doesn't mean that I don't have the utmost respect for those who have done that. In fact, I'm probably the biggest champion of those that have been through that. But I did find at all those organizations, and I even got the same questions when I went to Nebraska, and you can read about how upset they were when I left, meaning that I guess I was doing okay. The last point I'll make is, the Navy has some pretty unique academic programs, and I was very fortunate to go through one of them, and that was the Navy Nuclear Power Program. It's a classified program, so it's not accredited. You don't receive a master's degree when you get it because you have to go to a specific place to do all the courses to study. I did well beyond master's level education in that program. I took 54 exams, 8-hour finals, multiple times, stand-up boards, prototyping where you actually get qualified to operate a nuclear reactor. And then on top of that, my command of an aircraft carrier wasn't one that drove a carrier around the world. It was actually taking one and completely dismantling it and rebuilding it, as I just talked about. So I got to take application to the courseware that I took. And I'm very comfortable talking technical things, STEM background. And I believe that part of my job is to be a champion for not only our students, but our academicians that are here. We have world-class faculty here, and I'm really proud to just be part of that team.
And I think another follow-up question I have, kind of talking about your time at Nebraska,
Mm-hmm.
something that you really worked on a lot was making it more affordable for students.
Yeah.
And it kind of mirrored what President Johnson used to have, which was the Scarlet and Gray Initiative.
Right.
So one of my questions for you is, are you hoping to continue that legacy on, or do you have other goals of making Ohio State more affordable and more attainable for students who may not be able to afford coming here?
Yeah, I believe affordability and accessibility should be our North Star. The cost of education has gone up significantly over the last 10, 15 years. I'm very, very sympathetic to that for students. I know that can be a challenge. I like to make sure I understand what all the scholarship and needs-based programs that we have here. The Scarlet and Gray Advantage that you just described, I've looked into it just a little. I think it's still in its early stages. I support the concept. I did something very similar in Nebraska with a Promise program. I noticed Columbus State has a program almost exactly the same, so I was really heartened to see that. But the whole impetus behind creating that was, as we were just learning that we were going into a global pandemic, and I said, we have wonderful merit-based scholarship programs in Nebraska. What are we doing for Pell-eligible students or those students that are somewhere between Pell and other qualifications? And we didn't really have a program. And the beauty of that program is we created it and did not take it from the taxpayer money. We actually cut our budget, $5 million for the initial offering, and paid for it out of our own budget. I cut my own personal staff by 25% to help pay for that. And I'm really proud of what we did. It started out with 7,000 students that applied in 6 weeks. And by the time I left, we had over 18,000 students that had gone through that Nebraska Promise program. And you know what's interesting? They were performing at or better than all of the non-Promise programs, which is, again, the statement that given an opportunity for those that are inspired, they're going to do well, and they were. So I'll continue to take that mindset here and look at how can we best support those that may not have the same background or resources as everybody else. Reducing student debt is more than just getting it down to $0. Any effort that we can do to reduce student debt, which is also why I'm also a fan of seeing our students get through their studies here in as fast method as possible. So if you're here for 6 years, you're going to probably spend a lot more money on your education to stay here. And you all know this better than I do. It costs more now to attend university than it costs for just the tuition. So there's the cost of education part, and there's the cost of total attendance. And the cost of total attendance is what's been rising the price tag up. Today in most public universities, and I'm pretty sure it's the same here, I know it was in Nebraska, it was almost 2/3 of the total cost of attendance was living, eating, driving, parking, books, all the rest, compared to just the tuition fees. And I froze tuition for 2 years in Nebraska. I don't have enough information to know just yet what that future looks like here, but I'm always going to be looking to make sure that we're doing the absolute minimum to keep those prices under control.
Yeah, and so I know we have a couple of questions kind of going back to recent news, both with Les Wexner and the new AD. And so kind of starting with Les Wexner.
Sure.
It has more information has come to light with his affiliation with Epstein. And with someone who's such a big donor to the university, much of campus is named after him. Many are kind of concerned with the connection with the university and Wexner. And so how may the university respond to those concerns in light of recent events?
Yeah, the first thing that we should acknowledge is that the Wexners, both Les and Abigail, have been incredibly generous to this university, almost like nobody else in our history. So we should be very thankful to them and their family for that kind of generosity. The second is that I know what has been written up in the media no different than anybody else, and I don't know anything else more. But for those that are worried about this, the word I would use is patience. Let the facts play out. As you pointed out, there have been some more things that have shown up, but I don't know that anything really new. I mean, it's well known that they had a business relationship, and Mr. Wexner's been very clear that when he had any inkling of inappropriate business things happening, let alone anything else, they cut ties. So I think patience is the right word. And again, I don't know anything more than what's been written up in the same things you've read.
Gotcha.
I wanted to know a little bit about why Ross Bjork was chosen.
Sure.
What kind of made him stand out against other candidates?
Well, the first thing people should know is we had a wonderful range of candidates that wanted to come to this job. The second thing that's really important is there isn't any replacing Gene Smith, and I've said that publicly. 19 years in that kind of job anywhere in the country, not to mention that he's leading the highest revenue 36 D1 sport program in the country, it's extraordinary. I mean, there isn't a Hall of Fame ballot big enough to put Gene Smith in. So we knew we couldn't exactly replace Gene. But as I said at the press conference, I was looking for somebody that, first of all, was coming from a major program already. This was not a job that you could come in and learn on. You had to be ready for it. So I was looking for somebody that could come in and lead a very large, complex 36 D1 program right out of the gate. The second thing I was looking for was somebody that understands this incredibly fast-changing landscape in college athletics. I mean, the landscape's changing as we're sitting here talking. So we're talking about changes to name, image, likeness, potential revenue sharing with athletes, which not today, but could be. The governance model for the NCAA and where it sits with Division I, Division II, Division III, and even FBS football, even A5 football. So all of those things are on the table, and I needed somebody that was not only conversant, but that's actually in the arena. And Ross Bjork is in that. He's in compliance committees. He's been on the NCAA committees. He's led the athletic directors conference for the entire country. So he is a leader among leaders. And then finally, because we are the Ohio State University and we are part of the 14-member Big Ten today, soon to be 18, I need to have somebody that came in and had a certain weight, a certain gravitas to their voice leading this institution right out of the gate. Ross stood out in those categories in the interviews above the other candidates, and that's why I thought he was a natural pick.
I'm going to kind of kick it off to Nicole, just kind of going off of that question about Ross Bjork and his new appointment as the athletic director here at Ohio State.
So there were some critical things said about Bjork in a recent Sports Illustrated article that I believe was released this week, including one of the scandals of 2014 with Hugh Freeze. And the article kind of alleged that there were a lot of major NCAA violations that was downplayed by Bjork to the media. So there was some disinformation going on there. And that there was also the expensive contract extension when he was at A&M that cost the program a lot of money.
Right.
So kind of with these things in light, does that kind of bring any concern to you at all, or do you still have a lot of faith in his capabilities?
Well, first you got to know, we pulled that all apart in great detail, so there are no surprises. We go through a lot of personal back checks. I want you to know that I asked the questions about all those things, just as you're asking me, in more detail than you are. And his answers were outstanding, and we back checked them. So yes, did Hugh Freeze make a very bad personal mistake? You bet. And they fired him over that. The NCAA violations, they were already into looking at that. He didn't hire Jimbo Fisher. And they were at a point where a lot of college football coaches were getting extensions, and they had a risk of losing him, and it was part of recruiting. And as I even said in the press conference, I lived that in Nebraska, and it is a very, very hard call when you give a coach a contract extension like that. He also owned the decision, even though when you really get down to it, and that'd be the same here, the athletic director, although we give them lots of authority and a big budget to manage, those decisions don't get made in a vacuum. And then finally, I'll make this last point, and I said this there. You know, there's some ADs out there that haven't had to live through a lot of controversy. You know, they've just, maybe the right timing, programs weren't as large or complex. They hadn't been in that type of an arena. And, you know, again, to use a nautical reference, a calm sea never made a good sailor. The final thing I'll say is at this level, as Office of the President, the athletic director, all the way down to the coaches, it's incredibly important and rare to have an alignment on what you believe, what the institutional beliefs are and how you want to perform. Ross Bjork is ready for that. And the coaches, I know they're excited about having him here. Was his life perfect at A&M and at Ole Miss? Certainly not. But I'm confident that those life lessons are going to make him better prepared to come in here and do the job here.